And welcome to the BFF Real Podcast, where you pick a movie, rant and review about it, always keep it 100% real. We're your hosts, Edgar.
And Jayla, and today we want to invite you into our conversation on the movie I Saw the TV Glow. Now, a little synopsis so we're on the same page, and spoilers going ahead. The synopsis reads: a classmate introduces teen Owen to a mysterious late night TV show, a vision of a supernatural world beneath their own. In the pale glow of the television, Owen's view of reality begins to crack. Edgar, how'd you feel about this movie?
Um, I don't know I generally do not know how I felt about this movie. I think like that straight up. And this is also a warning for the end of the video. You know how we always give it our 1 to 10 reviews?
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I have to watch this movie again before I could give it like a proper rating. I don't
Never seen
know
before.
because
from this channel.
this
Crazy.
movie was kind of like it is definitely one of those think about films. It's not like you sit there and watch it film. You have to think about and like look at what you know.
Mm-hmm.
I would say I very much hated, or I feel like it dragged the beginning part, like the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
I was so lost. I was like, why are we still here? Because that beginning was kind of lengthy for my taste. However, the more the movie kept going, the more focused and drawn in I was. I would say that. By the very end, I was like glued. Like, oh my god, what the fuck? Like, what is happening? How are you? How did you feel?
I agree. I checked the time. I kept checking the time, like at the beginning of the film, seeing how much we had left. And then I noticed around like the 30-minute mark, I stopped check. It was literally a 30-minute mark. And I think that's when she comes back, right? Maddie comes back. It's around there, or maybe a little before.
That's when like they get grown up, like high school time.
The
like
time skip.
It was around 30 minutes. I'm like, there ain't no way that other part took 30 minutes for like barely nothing. I don't know.
No, I'm saying 30 minutes left of the film, not 30 minutes into the film. Yeah.
Both.
The
first 30 minutes.
Because this was
the last 30 minutes were definitely intriguing.
This was an hour and 30 minutes. So it's cut up into 30-minute sections.
Yeah, say an hour 40. Yeah.
40? Okay. Yeah, for me, it was like then maybe the last 40 minutes where it started like picking up for me. And I had a very strong, this movie felt like, I don't know if you've ever read them, but the Goosebumps books of the 90s, or maybe even the Goosebumps TV show that came out with R.L. Stine. I used to love those books so much. I had like a whole collection of them. My scholastic book fair, I always got whatever book was out. I think it's still going, which is crazy. But those books, they put kids in like these weird situations where there's like a monster of the week, or like they're sucked into a book and they have to like beat this monster to just survive. And this movie gave so much of that at the 30 minutes left of the movie mark and going forward. And then also like the TV show itself. And I was getting like a hit of nostalgia for it. And definitely it was talking about like, not talking about, but like scenes with the arcade and the movie theater. That was definitely, it felt like reminiscent of the 90s era. And I thought that was really cool. And I feel like it's playing on that idea of like the nostalgia we're feeling now of the 90s. Or maybe it was a little bit while ago. I don't know if we're still at the 90s. Maybe we're like at the 2000s now. But I feel like it played on that 90s nostalgia. And I like that a lot. Where was that going? Just to say that the last 30 minutes plus that was like the really like nice part for me. I do agree that the beginning dragged on a lot. But it makes sense kind of why it dragged on a lot. It was like trying to situate Owen, the main character, Justice Smith, in this world where he feels like an outcast and like, it makes sense by the end of the film. So I feel
Mm.
like it makes sense why it did drag, but you still felt that it did drag.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense to me. So I'm glad you got your peace and resolution with that making sense for you. It did not for
I
me.
did.
First of all, let me talk about the actor that played like young Owen. And
Mm.
look, not like
I was thinking that too.
I was like, hey, no way. When it first started playing, because I know Justice Smith was like one of the main characters for this film. So when the
Hmm.
film started playing, like back then, I'm like, ain't no way this is gonna
They
be
try to
that
pass
person.
him off
Oh,
as that.
they didn't look nothing
Yeah.
alike. Nothing. I was like,
Yeah.
so yeah, that bothered me. Like whenever they did any sort of flash, like those are not the same at all.
Yeah, that little boy. But then the girl, I couldn't even tell. Honestly, I was like, that's the same actress, right? Like
Mm,
throughout. I think
she,
they also
yeah.
did a time skip. So they did her right. But there
Well,
was like,
it was just herself throughout. I mean, I don't know. It kind of felt like kind of weird with that too, because I could tell by the voice, like in the first. I don't know if they were using like CGI like on her face or anything,
mm,
but I could tell by the voice. But it's also weird how like, because like even like towards the end when he's like supposed to be like a 40, 50 something year old man and he
yeah.
looks the exact same. I think if they would have just like maybe played with that and just like the same actors throughout, I don't
Mm.
know.
I think that, and like when he was 40, 50 years old and he was looking beat up, that man, oh my God, his lips was chapped.
Mhm. Dry
You know,
lips.
when a
Yeah,
black
oh,
person's
yeah,
lips are chapped.
dry lips.
Yeah. But I feel like that was supposed to, would you say, enhance the idea that his life was literally like being sucked out of him? Because he didn't look old, like in the sense that you would think old. He looked like scrawny, like, you know, rough. He looked really rough rather than looking old type of rough.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that was on purpose. Like, rather than saying that's bad CGI, well, yeah, I
I don't think
think
it was CGI at all.
you saw that man's skin and bones, and you was like, that was Justice Smith. You think he starved himself for that scene when he's an old man?
Yeah, I didn't notice him starved. He's just very skinny.
But throughout the film, you saw his chest a couple times. You saw he was
Yeah.
clearly not. I think they did a little movie magic there. But all that to say is that it fits the idea that you know his heart is not in his chest, and he's like slowly withering away. In my opinion,
Mm.
but yeah. But yeah, there's Justice Smith. That's the only person I recognize in this film. It was a very
Really?
A24 film. Like, think of A24, and this movie fits for me in the experimental slash. Well, actually, this movie is rated PG-13, which makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
And A24 actually does more like adult stuff. This is what I would imagine a PG-13 movie from A24 is. I feel like it hit the ballpark for it. Because what else is A24? You got what do we got? We got a lot of horror movies, but I'm blanking. What? There's a lot of horror movies from A24. What?
X, Pearl,
Okay, yeah,
Hereditary.
but I'm thinking Midsummer, Hereditary. But I don't think these were as this movie gets existential, but it's not as like gritty and
Girl, this film ain't not give me A24. I don't. Well, not
really.
in the way you're saying. Clearly, it is an A24 film.
Yeah,
I
but
think.
hmm,
I don't know. I think like for this film, it was it's a lot. I mean, you know what? I'm gonna just jump right into it.
Yeah.
So this film, it essentially, when I was looking at it, my first like mindset, especially when it comes to like horror films, is like, okay, I need to get scared, or if not, it's a failed horror film. And I think this film accomplished it. Weirdly, for a PG-13 film, especially, like, I hate PG-13 horror movies. Or
Mhm.
the way they handled their horror, it wasn't meant to be like scary horror.
Right.
Technically, it was more psychological, more
Existential,
uh, more eerie type thing. It was more like more, I don't know. I think like the way
environmental.
that, yeah, the way that they build the tension, especially like with the film shots, like with the blurry camera angles and blurry camera shots, and like
Hmm.
because you could see like when it goes out of focus, you could see like the distorted faces with like the like panic that the characters are feeling like
Hmm.
behind the scenes and stuff like that, and everything just ties into like, oh god, what's happening.
Hmm.
Especially they did hit some like nightmare horror. Like, like not horror, but like nightmare horror. Like if you're having like a nightmare, like those images, like the moon guy,
Hmm.
especially like when the close up with like the moon guy with the weird, like it was so like
Hmm.
it wasn't like wow horror, like oh my god,
Right.
I'm sure my film. It was like unsettling to look at horror and
Mm.
unsettling to experience horror, and I think they accomplished that quite successfully in my opinion.
Hmm.
Because just how consistent it was, and how, I don't know, how consistent they were in their goal of, or their genre or expression of horror.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree. I think they did a really good job, and I was like trying to think of my defining thing because you were like, well, what you just said, and I was trying to figure out like what my defining horror aspect of this was.
Hmm.
I think it's definitely the environmental stuff.
Yeah.
Like singling out that stuff. It's not just the nightmare esque thing for me. It's also the scenes where it's like, oh, you know what it was? It reminds me of recently, or maybe like in the last few years, there's been a renaissance of like this subliminal mind space. So like the idea of the backrooms, the idea of I don't know, like exploring an abandoned movie theater or
Hmm.
mall. There's been that renaissance, and you can see it a lot in like analog horror, where people are making these YouTube channels and creating a story of this. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's gotten really popular. And like the idea of this space that's like almost uncanny valley, being trapped in this space that's like, I don't know, it seems like it's forever, it's going forever, but also you're not, as you try to walk it, you're staying in the same place. I love how they did that in this film. And a couple scenes I could think of is like when he goes to the grocery store and it's like no one's at the grocery store, it's only him, which is first of all weird. But then when he turns around and sees Maddie, it shows like an even bigger shot that literally no one else is in the store but them two. And you know in your head, like, it's a grocery store that's open. You know, that's not how that works. But you know the characters aren't gonna like talk on it because Owen's kind of a crybaby bitch, and like Maddie, she knows what's happening. And like in that same scene, and in a lot of scenes where he's working, you see these shopping carts just littered in the outside, just vacant, like that sense of eeriness, like it's environmental, like people are supposed to be here, but they're not. And like people were once here actively doing something, but now you're like trapped in a time where like you just can't see it, or like time is moving where you're not there. I just think that's really cool. And it's very modern. I think that's a modern feel, like in the last 10 years. Cause I'm thinking, like, what does this say about the zeitgeist? We were just talking about how in poor things, Frankenstein, the zeitgeist of being afraid of like the science of that era, like how people thought religion was going to be overtaken by science in that era. And now we're seeing it where this thing is coming up, subliminal spaces where like people are trapped in this place that feels claustrophobic, but also really wide, and like you're running, but you're staying in place. I feel like that's another zeitgeist that we're experiencing, that like we feel like we're trapped in this stagnant non-progress, but it's so familiar that it's like, do we just stay here? Do we explore? What is, what do you do when you feel like you're trapped in this way?
Mhm.
Main rant. All that to say is that I really loved how they handled that, and I found it really interesting that that is already coming into modern media, because it's been all over like the YouTube space. But the fact that it's like, and there's probably more. There's probably other movies that do it, but yeah, I think that's really interesting how it already made its debut in 2024.
Yeah, so I do think that I've seen like other films that do kind of like that you've described. I just can't think of anything at the top of my
Off the
head.
top of your head.
But I did want to mention that
Mhm.
um Justice Smith, a few podcasts ago, we were just talking about how you've never seen him in a different role, and they were like, "Oh, maybe in this film," and then we saw this film, and nope,
Nope.
um, bro was typecasted again. Same
That man.
exact character that he has played over and over and over. Just
The
gay this time. At
apologetic.
least they cast him gay this time.
That's true. Or would
Queer.
you say trans? Because he didn't like.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I would say queer, for the sake because things were left kind of a mix, kind of.
What was
I don't know.
ambiguous?
Well, just the fact that it was kind of left like as a discussion point whether like what side was like kind of true and things like that.
You think it wasn't
Um,
answered?
not quite. Um, I put this. It was more of the fact that
I'm just gonna say
kind
I
of
think it was. I think it
it
was
was
answered.
answered.
So what we're
I
talking
think
about,
I
right?
I agree, but like I meant as in themselves in their character as the way like in kind of like the way that they identify like thinking about it more like yes like I get the point that like in the very last scene especially like within the bathroom thing but
Hmm.
um I don't know. Yeah, I mean
Let's open. Let's like talk about what we're talking about. So in this movie, we meet Owen. He's a little bit of baby. He is in fifth grade, I
oh,
believe. Yeah, he's at fifth grade, I'm pretty sure. And he meets this girl who's in seventh grade, and she's obsessed with this TV show, this CWS TV show called The Pink Opaque, right? She would have loved CW. You know what? I think I would have watched that show as a kid. It's so Goosebumps like. It is. Um, but yeah, in the show, it shows two people who have this psychic link, and they don't really. They met each other once at a summer camp thingy, and now they go to the psychic realm every time they're asleep and fight baddies, all controlled by this moon character, Mr. something. I forget his name. Anyways, she talks about that show, and so he's interested in the
Is it
show, but
Mr.
she's a seventh grade.
Sprinkly?
What?
Mr. Sprinkly?
It was not Mr. Spring. I promise you, it was. It started with the M, and it made sense. Mr. Melancholy. Mr. Melancholy.
Ah, what the Mr.
Yeah. Spring.
Oh,
No.
I think that was like the ice cream.
Oh, okay. Which was one of the monsters.
Yeah.
Anyways, they're watching this TV show, and then they kind of get close, talking about how Maddie, the girl who's in seventh grade at the time, is like, I feel like really related to these characters more than I feel like real life,
Mhm.
more than I feel this. And Owen is like, huh, weird, but okay. I just like the show. And he's also kind of feeling like, I don't know, every time I think about me, his own sexuality, his own feelings towards the people around him, he feels a little detached, but he just thinks that's like him, you know? He just thinks
Mhm.
that it's a Justice Smith character and he's supposed to feel that way. Um, which, kind of works here. I think it makes sense here for his character to be like that. He is typecasted, but it does make sense here. Yada yada yada. They grow up a little bit, and Maddie's like, I can't stay in this town anymore. I gotta get out of here. It's gonna kill me. I don't know how, but it's gonna kill me. And we think she's being dramatic, but she tells Owen, yo, pack your bags, come with me. Then Owen snitches basically, which is crazy. But I was thinking, I'm like, you know what? He's in ninth grade. I think I would too. I don't know. I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't snitch. I would just ghost her. Yeah, yeah, I'd ghost her. But he snitches, saying basically that, yo, I don't want to go there. But not only does he not tell her that he doesn't want to go, he takes the other route and being like, my parents won't let me go. So it
Mhm.
just shows an instance of him like locking himself out, being the scaredy cat. He was like the character on the show. Because yada yada yada, skip forward to like 2006. He is 22 years old. He's, doing all the typical 22-year-old stuff, having a job, driving, and he is anyways, is at the grocery store, and he's approached by Maddie, who everybody thought she was dead because she disappeared like 7 years ago, by the way. Um and he's like, yo, where have you been? People think you're dead, right? Turns out she committed Sudoku, but when she did commit Sudoku, she woke up as the other character. I'm forgetting her name, but the other character in the TV show, which is how she comes to find out that she is that character, and Owen is the other character from the TV show, and the moon, Mr. Melancholy, has like put them in this sleep and carved out their hearts, and has just kind of like tried to force them to live in this dreamscape until they die. So basically, he has no competition anymore, save the day type of stuff. And she tells him this, but he doesn't believe it. He thinks she's crazy, slash, is very scared, because that's his personality. He's like the timid guy. He's afraid if it is true, what he has to amount to. And also, he's afraid that, like, all this is a lie. It's kind of like red pill, blue pill situation, like Matrix style. He's afraid to take whichever pill will wake him up and go back to the gritty reality of it all. But he's also afraid that that reality is better than the one he's been living. Like, that's why I said existential crisis. Because, yeah, imagine you're just, all of this is fake and you're so much better on the outside. But to do that, you have to commit Sudoku. And that hurts. And you're like, well, damn, I don't know if I can do it. But yeah, he decides whatever pill makes you stay in this land, and punches her. That scene was, yeah, he punches, he like knocks her to the ground, and runs off. I was like, damn. I mean, would you believe her at that point?
Um, so if we're talking like in the literal sense,
Yes. But you are Owen. So everything that's happened to Owen happened. You're literally Owen in the situation. Would you believe her?
I don't know. I didn't experience it. Like I don't know because I don't know how often or how livid because that is that's the hard thing because maybe I'm taking too literal about this, but
Mm,
like how often did you experience like those moments? How you know
yeah.
it's a lot like because
Sudoku's
she be
pretty extreme to
crazy.
jump to. Yeah. No.
Like can you prove it? Like
And even so, even if it was proven and you knew that you would have to Sudoku yourself, would
mm,
you do it? That's the thing that would get me. Like I can't just slap myself awake. Like I couldn't. I don't know if I would, but
I
there
don't
are.
think we should say if we would in this podcast right
Well, I mean,
now. We're a
okay,
little heavy. I'm not gonna lie, girl.
all right,
Let's keep it light.
fine. All I have to say is
Trying to
that
trigger some people.
it's the movie. All I have
Listen.
to say is that he chooses to stay in the world, and then
Mhm.
another 20 years passes, and he's 48 years old. No, actually, you know what? I jumped a little bit. What is it? So it goes from 2006 to 2010, which is 4 years. 4 years pass. He's 28, supposedly with a family that he's very happy with. I call
Mhm.
bullshit.
Right. Where is
I,
the family?
I, he did not look like he had a family. I'm gonna just say it. I don't know.
But also, he kept looking the same. Technically, he is that age. The actor,
Right now,
he's actually like 29 or something. So, like, by that time, he was
it's
the age
supposed.
that the character
Okay.
was. But you know, he looks like a high school twink, barely college twink. Ain't no.
You know what? And that's a blessing too. Black
Right.
do not crack. But
Good for fucking.
he said he had a family, and also he looks back to like the TV shows and he's like, oh, that was so corny. Like he's looking at reruns and he sees it in a whole different way. Like the baddies weren't as scary. They were like, just
Children.
solvable baddies. Like with the power of friendship, we can solve any mystery, that type of stuff.
Hmm.
I feel like that. See, but that's such a common thing, which I like that this movie does. It plays on, oh yeah, things are not scary. Look at the Ghostbusters. I bet anybody who was scared of Ghostbusters back when it came out look back and be like, oh, I was afraid of that. That's a bit embarrassing. Like, so it's really interesting that that is a real thing that happens. You can't really fault him at still being a non-believer. It's interesting. But so then 20 years goes by. He's 48, looking scrawny, looking rough, just really rough, still working at a kid's pizzeria place. Um, oof. And yeah, he basically
Pizzeria. It was
is
like an
choosing.
arcade. It's like
It
Chuck
was
E.
an arcade. Yeah.
Instead with Chuck
Yeah.
E. Cheese.
Esque. Yeah. Five Nights at Freddy's. No. And he's working there, and basically he's singing happy birthday, and he has this like psychic break. Like he just notices something's wrong, and he like screams, and he gives that emotion that I was talking about back in the American Society of Magical Negroes, where like he's like screaming like get me out, help, like breaking
That
down.
was so on. Like I felt like that was a good scene. Like
I want him
he
more
did what
like
he
that.
had to
I've been
do.
said that. I knew he would eat it up, and I was right.
More panicking? Oh,
Yes, I want more panicking. I want that emotion that he's hiding from us. He is. I know he is. But no, that scene. And it gave me, and a lot of these scenes, I don't know if this is true, but a lot of this movie reminded me of Jordan Peele esque style of filmmaking. And what I'm thinking about specifically is in Us, when I don't know if you remember Adelaide, she was walking around the carnival and we just saw the back of her and like the camera was following her back as she moved along the carnival, as she like went through the maze and stuff. That reminded me of when Owen was back in high school and we were following his back as he
Mhm.
went through the corridors trying to get to the, the photography room.
Mhm.
Yeah, that room. And I was like, okay, maybe I'm stretching. Maybe it's just because they're black kids and we're seeing the back of them. But then this scene where he screams at the top of his lungs because he's having a psychic break, everybody in the theater, and this is another great environmental slash psychological scene where everybody literally stops like robots, like they pause as he's having
Mhm.
this break. And you know he's so much in his own mind, he's not even realizing that the world has stopped its function. Everybody's literally standing there lifeless. And that reminded me, do you remember Get Out? That scene where Chris, the main character, walks up the stairs and all the white people are in the house. And right when he gets up the stairs past the corner, all of them stop and then they look up at him, like knowing that he's out of ear sight. It's
Mhm.
not exactly the same, but the eeriness of like everybody acting.
Yeah, I wouldn't call
Yeah.
that Jordan Peele though, because
Mm,
a lot of people have done that,
mm.
which is great. Good as it's a good
Trope.
as like yeah, like I love it,
Mm-hmm.
but people done it before.
There.
However, I I love the ambiguity
Mm,
between what's real and what's not that this film
mm,
has. Especially when you were talking about like that scene where everyone kind of like stopped and he's screaming, having like kind of like a panic attack.
mm-hmm.
And then, because after that, because what happened? Like, were they real people? Like, why are they acting that
Mm.
way? And then even afterward, where it's after like the bathroom scene, where it's like apologizing to everyone, and it's like no one's
Nobody's.
acknowledging it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so weird, and it lets you like wander, and it's so uneasy and unsettling because like it's
Mm-hmm.
like what you know. I
Mm-hmm.
think I like that part too. Something that I would also like to say is the way how they did the title cards for this film for like the
Mm.
breakup,
The
because it was
years.
like episode, was it like episodes or seasons or something? I don't know. I forgot.
Oh, like when the pink lettering was on the
Yeah,
screen.
because
Ah,
it
gotcha.
was like to break up, and then at the very end when it was like the end of the film, because he worked in a movie theater. Where did he work at? Was it an
It was
arcade
the
or a
movie
movie
theater,
theater?
and then I think it was an arcade. I think it switched to an arcade because
I
no, he
don't
said the movie
know.
theater shut down, and then he walked over. He followed his boss to an arcade.
Oh, okay. So in the movie theater, like towards the end of the film, it was like 10 minutes left, and
Mm-hmm.
it was like the he was like scrubbing, and we thought the film was done, and that in the background it was like the end, like of the thing. Like that would be so cool too. Like that
Mm.
concept. Clearly, it was a little cheated. It was technically yes, like the general end or like the end scene or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know. It could have been cool if it was like the outro, like this is the end, or but I think guess they used it more like the final title card of the end,
Mm. Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense. But yeah,
Yeah, they did play. I thought you were gonna talk about the scene where he's like, "Walk." Is that what you're talking about?
in
When he's
the
walking in the.
that's part of it. It that
Mm,
that happened because one of the breaks was when childhood, and then we kind of first saw it like when he was in high school,
right.
and then it would join like the cassette. Well, bro started walking, and then it went up to like the other rider, right?
Got you.
King.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was dope. There's a lot of scenes actually in this movie like that, and that's why I know you're like you gotta watch it again so you can like
Mhm.
catch up all those,
I
watch all
think
those.
for me, oh, finish what you're saying. Sorry.
I was just gonna say another example of those was, and I noticed it, and I knew it was weird, but like by the end of the movie, I'm like, oh, that's why it was weird.
Mhm.
It was again that scene I'm talking about when he's walking um, in the corridors of the hallways. Corridors of the hall. He's walking in the hallways of the school up to that photography, the red room,
Mhm.
and the whiteboards or the cork boards that are on the hallways. You know, it usually has like
Yeah.
stuff talking about the school, stuff talking about like it's
Yeah.
just like
The
a
bulletin
cork board.
boards.
Bulletin boards, yes, thank you. Jesus. Bulletin boards, but instead of having any sort of school pride, instead of having any sort of like distinguishing factor to make it look like it's a school, it just has quotes. And at first I was like, yeah, those are kind of weird. But the quotes were like, pain makes you stronger, or um, it was a famous one that it lingered on as he
Mhm.
turned the corner, and I'm forgetting what it was. But those quotes are not only very much like a I don't know, something someone would say to you like through like on TV,
Mhm.
but it was very clearly like in a dream sense, like wake up is literally on those I wouldn't be surprised if one of those bulletins boards said wake up. Like that's why
Mhm.
I'm very convinced that it is, and though it has
Mhm.
this ambiguous like maybe it wasn't.
Mhm.
I think like in that world for the sake of that universe, it is. Like I'm very
Mhm.
convinced of that. And I like
For
that. I
me,
love bleak endings.
yeah.
So
Mhm.
I'll say that it is.
While watching it, I took it more of the flip side of the kind of like subliminal messages or connotation of the films.
Mm,
So it talked a lot about basically gender sexuality. Like that was the main topic throughout the film, and you kind of get to these points. Like it kind of starts getting clearer towards the end of the um, because we kind of saw like the whole moment, like when what's her name? When Sis comes back and finds
Maddie.
him, like after high school, yeah, after like went missing and everything. When
Mm-hmm.
Maddie finds him again, it's damn. It's kind of like, hey, I gotta tell you the truth, basically. And when she was telling like the story, like, yo, I left, it kind of like that, yo, I'm gay, and I like runaway kid from a small town type thing, trying to go to a
Mm,
different town, and then like, oh, I cannot escape, whatever, like
mm, mm-hmm.
and that same connotation of then like she kind of outed him, or them to themselves that like, yo, this woman, like that's you, and that's kind of like because they said it themselves, like after that whole scene, and they stormed off, and they were like working the movie theater, wondering if it's true. Is like could I really be like that confident, powerful person, da 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 da, and like
Mm-hmm.
that whole connotation, and just in general, that kind of idea of like double life and masking, like we saw like what was really happening while that TV show was playing, and we saw the
Mm-hmm.
scene of bro like or them when they were like in a freshman year of high school, like putting on the dress and like walking and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, and it was very like a lot of that too, and like kind of like suppressing that as they got older, like towards the end, and
Mm.
you know and that whole connotation of like burying yourself, like bury me alive, basically, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's dope. Like I realized those connections, but I think hearing it was even better because that just brings
Mhm.
like so many different layers into it. The idea of burying
Mhm.
self to unbury yourself in like the real world. The fact that Owen never saw Maddie again, showing that she chose the whatever pill it was to like
Mhm.
be herself, and he, decided to stay in the comfort of this reality, even though it wasn't really comforting, but it was
Mhm.
something he knew. It, yeah, I think they really did well with pairing those.
I think it was a lot of like watching the TV glow, and that's oh, this is something that I forgot to say, because there was like a whole monologue of like I'm sitting there watching myself through the TV, like I'm watching myself on the TV, and then oh, I'm choosing to stand up and like walk as far away as like from the TV so I can't see myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that whole topic, and with that parallel wall of them in the TV being like badasses or whatever the heck it is kind of you being trapped within yourself in that reality
Mm-hmm.
that a lot of people have to like you're yourself, and then you're watching a movie because you're it's like a character that you're playing.
Mm-hmm.
And like just that difference within like me and like the image or what I'm seeing in
Mm-hmm.
that separation, in those like manic episodes of like trying to break out and stuff, like representing inner selves and reasons that I don't fully get, which is why I want to like watch it. Like if I watch it back, like what can I catch? Can I like knowing everything from the beginning? Because it doesn't get
Mm.
clear to the end, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe the first 30 minutes might
Be more interesting. I
I
can
don't
definitely,
know.
because I'm thinking back
Or
on it and I
what?
was thinking about these two things and it makes even more sense now that I'm thinking about it. There was one
Mhm.
scene where Owen was like, "Hey, do you still watch the Pearl Opaque with your friend?" And Maddie's like, "No, because you told everybody that I touched a boob
I
and now
tried to touch her tape.
that I touched a titty," which wasn't true. But that's not the point. The point is that if they're in this dream state and they're trying to get like, and the I keep forgetting his name. What's the moon guy's name?
The moon. Oh,
Yeah,
Mr.
masquerade
Uh,
something. The moon guy. The moon guy's trying to trap him in there. She says physically that it's like the world is out to get me, or like it's like she's out to get me. Maddie said like those words, and at first we're like, oh yeah, that's teen angst. Of course, she's gonna feel like that. But in the idea that they're trapped into this world, that makes sense. He would literally make it so she feels ostracized in this world, that she doesn't feel that comfort. She doesn't have another person to continue watching this TV show with, so she doesn't feel like the character that she actually is. And then the second thing that I was thinking of is his mom, Owen's mom, dies the same month that Maddie supposedly runs away or supposedly dies. And like in the idea of the world plot, that makes a lot of sense because instead of Owen focusing on how Maddie ran away, why she ran away, maybe even following her, the moon makes a situation where his mom dies, so he's more focused on that instead of her. Like redirecting him back into this world, into this reality instead of breaking away like Maddie did,
mhm.
which makes a lot of sense and I think is cool. And I think that would be like upon a second watch. But in that same instance where we're talking about the parallels between staying trapped within a world and staying trapped within yourself, like in your sexuality, I think that's also a really amazing point because we know from the car ride home that his mom is not open per se, but like when he asks if he could stay up late and watch the Pink Opaque, his mom is like, "Well, you know that's kind of late," and he kind of pushes back, saying, "I know, but like, can I please?" And his dad is the one who says, "Isn't that a girl show?" So bringing on that sexuality, like sexuality, the identity of oneself, that's what shuts Owen up because he kind of feels that he wants to watch it. He knows that that's something he's interested in, but his dad is telling him no. And when his mom dies, all he has left is his dad. So he's not gonna like. It's just another thing to keep him in that state, like repressing his identity, because now his dad is the only thing he has to rely on, and making it so, and the moon guy making it so that he only has his dad left in the world is another instance of that double entendre of staying in this world, but also keeping your identity of who you feel like you are within you. You know, I feel like you could write a paper about this book. I was a movie because I was like, at first I was like, yeah, it's interesting, but like these parallels are really like interesting
Yeah,
to
and
think
that's what
about.
I'm saying. Like, this movie is one of those movies that this is a movie to like talk about and stuff after.
Mm-hmm.
Just like what was it? Poor Things.
Poor things, yeah.
Yeah, like I find this movie very similar to that one. Like, it's a lot of brain went into writing this movie. Like, it was
Mm-hmm.
very
Big brain.
intentional. I still can't get over my hatred of the first 30 minutes. The person who was playing
The
young,
casting choice,
yeah,
damn,
that's
that's not
still,
even.
uh, but I think like in general, it's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. It reminds me. I don't know if you've, and this is a really short story, but there was this Reddit post a while back about this guy, and he got into this motorcycle accident, like this really bad motorcycle accident, and he woke up like a week later, and he was, recovering slowly, and then he met this woman, like who he really fell in love with. He was like, "This is amazing." Met this woman. He grew old with. He had a wife and kids actually, and he was like, I don't know, 30 years old, living this life, having this wonderful life with his family. But then he looks over to his dresser and he sees this lamp. And he's gotten this lamp like a while back. But something about it isn't right. He doesn't know what it is. But it's just like very, it doesn't feel like it's real.
Mm.
And then it like hits him all at once. And then he wakes up back in that hospital, like literally maybe like a day passed. And he's like, all his life, that entire, 20, 15 years that he lived wasn't real. It was all fabricated all in the span of a day. I butchered that, but that's basically the story. And it reminds me of this and what I was talking about earlier about the internet conscious coming into movies with the subliminal mind space, and just how like the idea of not knowing what is reality and what isn't reality. Is there a word for not reality? Fiction? Yeah. What's reality?
Realistic,
The opposite.
non-reality.
Just reality. I was
Oh,
going to say fiction.
non-reality fiction,
Yeah. So
or
reality versus fiction. Not which you're in is a really existential thing.
idealism, like
Idealism. Oh, like what we were talking about with poor things. Realism versus the romanticism. But
mm,
not really. I wouldn't say this movie is romanticism. It's
it's the
it's just
opposite.
existential. Yes, but not opposite in like a realist way. Opposite in like a nightmare way.
Yeah.
Which is really cool. And again, I love bleak endings. Like The Mist is top up there for me. This ending, where I'm convinced that not only did he take the pill that makes him stay in this world where he's dying, he's not even happy in this world. He's like, apparently he has a wife and kids, but he still works at a. Not to say you can't work at a, an arcade and not be happy, but like clearly he was like, this just sad, apologetic. He's always apologetic in his movies, but in this one especially so, where he's like just trapped in this world, but also trapped in himself. Like we're talking about the queer um, similes to it, and he's not even happy in this world, but it's better than going to a world that you're unsure of who you are in.
Mm.
So bleak, and I just really like it. Bleak movies do something for me. Seeing people just just miss an opportunity, just miss like I'm thinking like a Pan's Labyrinth situation where she's like dead, but that one gets happier. You
Damn,
know,
Jayla.
that one's a bit happier because
Yeah.
the dreamscape, but still, like she's dead. that's the reality of it. Just that gut punch. Yeah.
Yeah. I would also, before we finish, I would
Mm-hmm.
also like to mention that I don't know if this is true or confirmed, but when bro was getting sucked into the TV, who was the one that like was holding them or pushing them
His dad.
back? Hmm.
So this adds on. Yep.
Like that's like
Mm-hmm.
it adds on like once you're like stepping into like the guess what's holding you back.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. So yeah,
And
I just wanted
the
to point that out because
and the very next scene where he's like in the bathtub and his dad is holding his was he I was actually kind of confused about that scene. That very next scene where it's his dad doing the same motion, like grabbing him, but now they're in like a bathtub and it seems like he's pushing his head underwater. But now I'm not sure. Maybe Owen was like
yeah, or
trying
like a
to.
toilet or like bully. I don't know. It was like a bully like pushing a head into like a toilet.
I'm pretty sure that was also his dad. And I thought it was a bathtub because I was gonna say either Owen is again trying to either even subliminally trying to like drown himself and get back to his himself like in the other world, or it's his father just like I don't know, traumatizing him, trying to get that memory of him getting sucked into the other world back into his head, because as he's doing that he's like, you're not my father, you're not my dad. Like he's having another psychic break where he's like realizing this world isn't real,
Yeah.
which is dope, which is dope.
Mm. Yeah, Yayla, what do you rate this movie?
I rate this, and this conversation definitely boosted it up a little bit for me.
Mm.
I was gonna give this a 7, but I actually give it an 8.
Eight.
Yeah, I'm I really like the underlying messages of this. I feel like you could write a whole paper on. I wish I could write a paper. I wish I could write a paper on this, and it was something like I wish I was back in school so I could like do that. But yeah, I just really love those parallels and
This
like
film
how it
just
plays.
came out. Possible.
Hmm?
This film just came out.
That's what I'm saying. I wish I was back
Yeah.
in school, you know? And like, yeah, the only thing that's not giving it higher for me is again those first 30 minutes,
Mm,
even though I know if I went back and looked,
yeah, that's
it
why
would be
like
better.
I'm like, ugh, I don't know if I could give it a rating yet because I think
Oh,
I deserve like a rewatch. I would say
give it
right now,
some.
without that rewatch, I want to do like 7.5. But I feel like
Mm,
with a rewatch, like it could possibly 8.5 ish. You
mm.
know, but right now it's like I really like need that rewatch first. But yeah.
We'll rewatch it together. I feel like it was good. And I think all that to say is if you decide to watch this, it those first 30 minutes are kind of rough. I'm not gonna lie. I paused it. I had to
Mm.
stretch a little bit. Um, but nah, I think it's worth it at the end if you like psychological and bleak endings. Yeah. But that's our little rant and review, and it's been real. Hopefully, I think it was. Are we real? Nah. It's been real. If you like this conversation, please go check out some of our other videos and go follow us on Instagram at the BFF Real.
Mhm. And please don't forget to subscribe and comment. If you are listening to our podcast channel, please follow us because we post frequently. Mhm. And please also like and comment and subscribe and follow us. Yeah.
Oh,
Oh yeah, it's Edgar.
and Jayla